Thank you, James. As you have heard, sustainability for us at Sibanye-Stillwater is not a function of compliance, but rather a strategic imperative to deliberately change the role our business plays in society, the role we also play in economies. We do this by sticking to the knitting in being miners and in supporting the growth of new economies in a manner designed to build legacies. The tenets, of course, of our sustainability strategy are guided by three areas: environmental stewardship, which is about our role in promoting sustainable use of resources and making sure that we transition towards the low carbon future. The second is social and impact outcomes, using our economic and societal influence to co-create positive legacies. And lastly, governance integrity, our commitment to engagement with all stakeholders, but engagement with it ethical, which is undertaken with integrity, doing the right thing even when no one is looking. These three areas of consciousness remain relevant and integral to our business. Our work, though, over the year has been to mature these philosophies into application and focus on outcomes, to understand how they are applied and to what end. This shift in maturity has led us to develop an integrated sustainability strategy, which in the end addresses short-term actions, but these are short-term actions required to achieve long-term benefits. The benefits to society, benefits to the global economy, benefits to our stakeholders, and strengthening our role as an extractive industry player. Our approach towards this has been to recognize interdependencies by creating value and acting on opportunities. Thank you. Our broadening of application of these themes towards ESG has allowed us to not only address the discrete specialities of environmental, social, and governance, but to provide clear and distinct paths towards economic benefit. The benefits, of course, that accrue as a result of our operations. In particular, due to the areas of our work in developing economies, in transitional economies, we have found an urgent need to not only build long-term sustainable economic strength, but to link that economic strength to environmental sustainability, social sustainability, and to embed governance in our work. Sustainable economies enable participatory decision-making, meaningful transitions towards making ESG valuable to our long-term work. The strategy is divided into four distinct areas of focus. Theme one is embedding human rights and ethics inside and out. This theme focuses us as Sibanye on aligning our behavior inside the organization and outside, but more importantly, it is a body of work that recognizes that there must be alignment between our internal commitment to how that behavior expresses itself outside. This body of work recognizes that the institution holds an ethical responsibility to both care and protect and support its stakeholders. You have recently heard about our joint responsibility towards employees in the safety and health. We discussed this a little bit more in looking at our diversity and accountability by focusing on women in mining. Thing two is our focus on developing a climate change resilient business, color-coded apple green on the slides. This directs our attention towards the strategic growth opportunities presented by ESG. The Chief Executive, Neil Froneman, has already alluded to the commitments into where we have taken advantage of opportunities. You will hear more later on from our colleagues Grant and Jevon on our road towards carbon neutral, and also our commitment to the reduction of water intensity and demand, the proactive management of tailings, and our view of the interconnectedness between biodiversity, rehabilitation, and long-term benefits to our areas of work. The third theme we call Entrenching Long-Term Economic Sustainability, color-coded tan on the presentation. This focuses our work squarely on beginning with the end in mind. My colleague Themba will share with you our work on how we have used our assets of land, our economic and financial capability to co-create, visualize modern towns, which are based on the ethos of sustainability, of an economy post-mining, which is co-created with the communities within which we work. And last but not least, the last theme focuses upon developing data-driven and considered decision-making. This one is color-coded purple in the presentation. This really reflects our commitment to transparency, to rigorous reflection and testing, and to ensuring that we use a science-based approach towards our detail. They are embedded into the business and do not act outside of the work that we do. Thank you. Moving on a little towards our women in mining and to how we reflect on inclusivity and diversity. I'll start off with a quote from our chief executive. Mr. Froneman quotes, "I am calling on all leaders to champion this change to better our industry, our society. We must not forget the hardships women face every day, especially given the prevalence of gender-based violence in South Africa. I urge everyone, men and women alike, not to be bystanders, but to report and stop gender-based violence and harassment, both at work and at home." This area is one of the areas of which we are most proud. It is our work reflective of human rights insight. It is our work to promote inclusivity and diversity. And it focuses specifically on making sure that we build a globally integrated and representative organization in mining. For 2 years, we've been included in the Bloomberg Gender Index. And again, we will submit ourselves to this index this year. It is a testament to our work that we've been included. Our commitment to transforming this industry has currently resulted in 31% of new recruits in 2020 in the South African industry being women. This is a phenomenal achievement given the industry within which we work. It is still our target to have 30% female workforce by 2025. And this, in our view, would place us significantly above our peers in gender representation, in participation, and in building a cadership of women who are professional and who are skilled. It supports us and our view of how we consider human rights inside out. As mentioned to you before, we will now have an opportunity to move into the detail of these sustainability strategies, and I will pass you on to my colleague Jevon Martin to share with you part of our building of a climate resilient business, our road to carbon neutrality. Thank you, Jevon.
Thanks very much, Louise. So it gives me great pleasure to give an update on our carbon neutrality strategy. Sibanye-Stillwater recognizes that climate change is the most pressing risk facing humanity and our planet today. It also presents numerous opportunities and risks to our business. In doing our part to mitigate climate change as well as achieve the objectives of the Paris Agreement and the UN Sustainable Development Goals, Sibanye has made a commitment to achieve carbon neutrality by 2040. This commitment wasn't taken very lightly and was underpinned by extensive amounts of work that culminated in our energy and decarbonization strategy. This strategy is guided by our climate change and decarbonization position statements, but seeks to achieve the strategic objectives of reducing our overall greenhouse gas emissions, ensuring security of supply for our operations, enhancing sustainability through reduced energy and carbon costs, as well as partnering in the transition in a South African context. We've identified 5 implementation levers that will allow us to deliver on these strategic objectives. And without going into too much detail, just at a high level, the first one is really creating an enabling external and internal environment for decarbonization. The second is your traditional demand-side energy management, where we focus on eliminating energy waste as well as improving energy efficiency. Thirdly, we're focusing on sourcing low-cost renewable energy as part of our broader energy mix. We're also looking to leverage new technologies that are emerging in the market, predominantly looking at the likes of digital, storage, and hydrogen technologies to ensure that we go 100% all the way through to carbon neutrality. We're also looking to take ownership of those emissions that incur upstream and downstream of our value chains, effectively our scope 3 emissions, and ensuring those too move through to net zero. And those hard to abate remnant emissions, we also take accountability for those and ensure that we put in place offset strategies that will allow us to achieve a complete net zero. Looking at our emissions profile, Sibanye has one inherent advantage in that our operations are predominantly electrified, and as a result, 88% of our operational emissions, being scope 1 and 2, are electricity. As a result, renewable energy is going to feature very strongly as our in order to reach carbon neutrality. Thanks. The execution of the strategy is already delivering very positive results. We've initially focused very strongly on the governance aspect of the strategy, ensuring that we have strong position statements in place to guide the strategy. We've also adopted science-based targets to guide our pathway, ensure adequate disclosure through CDP and TCFD aligned reporting. We've recently linked executive remuneration to decarbonisation and conducted group-wide initiatives to promote decarbonisation through the operations. Last year, through energy efficiency opportunities, we were able to reduce our carbon emissions by 165,000 tonnes of CO2. We're also looking to displace all coal use within the group, starting with the replacement of the Beatrix boilers with electricity boilers. We also have our flagship Beatrix methane to power project that has reduced carbon emissions by 14,000 tonnes of CO2 per annum. This is also registered as a UN Clean Development Mechanism project, and to date has generated just short of 300,000 carbon credits. We're actively deploying digital twins across our operations to enhance our energy management. And we're also promoting the decarbonisation of the suppliers as part of our broader value chain. Thank you. Looking forward, there's a number of other initiatives currently under development that will allow us to deliver on full carbon neutrality. On the advocacy side, Sibanye-Stillwater continues to play a significant advocacy role in the South African electricity supply industry, where we engage extensively with government, the national regulator, as well as the local utility, Eskom. We're looking to set scope 3 emission targets to ensure that we take accountability for those emissions outside our value chain. As mentioned, we're looking to eliminate all coal use throughout the group. As part of our strategic energy sourcing plan, we plan to deploy extensive renewable energy, which I'll talk to shortly. Whilst within the US operations, we are preparing a request for proposal to ensure that we secure renewable energy within our Montana operations. From a technology perspective, we're looking at the trialing of battery electric vehicles within our operations to displace the diesel tractors mobile machinery currently in use. We're also extensively analyzing different storage technologies in order to ensure that we can reach our goal of 100% renewable energy including a pre-feasibility study currently being conducted for the underground pumped hydro. We're also in discussions with a leading global OEM in terms of incorporating battery energy storage systems as part of our renewable energy projects. We're also progressing a carbon offset strategy, which will include the likes of nature-based solutions, carbon trading, and carbon capture storage. Our renewable energy projects are core to our decarbonization strategy as well as our ESG strategy. In 2020, in the beginning of this year, we undertook a comprehensive study to understand our energy requirements as well as our greenhouse gas footprint associated with each of our individual shafts and processing plants, together with an understanding of the South African regulatory environment, the renewable energy market and the technologies available within, the natural resources in terms of wind and solar available in South Africa, as well as a good understanding of available sites across our operations, as well as remote sites across South Africa. We're able to put this information together and develop a comprehensive portfolio of renewable energy projects approved for execution. This includes a 50 megawatt solar PV project for our gold operations, with the site secured and permitted close to our Kloof operations. A process is currently underway to appoint the project developer that would execute this project on a PPA basis. We are targeting to achieve commercial operation of this project in late 2023. Earlier this year, we also issued a request for information out to the market for up to 250 megawatts of wind to identify shovel-ready projects that we could bring into operation as quickly as possible. We got an overwhelming response, and we identified a number of projects across the Northern, Western, Eastern Cape. And based on the economics put forward and our understanding of the regulatory environment, we are now progressing a request for quotation for 250 megawatts of wind to secure these projects as part of our broader energy mix. Based on the preliminary timelines, we anticipate we'll bring these projects online in 2024. Considering our expanded footprint across the Northwest Province in South Africa from RPM, Kroondal, and Americana, we've also identified our long-life assets and their requisite energy requirements. These assets can support collectively 175 megawatts of solar PV projects. Earlier this year, we completed a feasibility study which identified suitable sites, demonstrates the economics and the decarbonization potential of these projects, which have now been approved for execution. We have commenced the site permitting processes, including the environmental authorizations and rezoning. These projects are, in terms of timelines, are driven by these long lead items, but we plan to have these commercially operational by early 2025. Collectively, these projects have a capital cost in the order of about 8 billion rand to be funded through off-balance sheet PPA financing on a 15 to 20-year basis. As a result, there's a minimal capital outlay from a Sibanye perspective, and we gain access to electricity at a 30 to 50% discount for solar and a 20 to 30% discount on wind from day one, escalating at CPI. The projects would also generate further offsets from a carbon tax liability perspective. Collectively, the projects would enable a 24% reduction in our Scope 2 emissions in 2025 and 100% by 2038, including the likes of storage and balancing marketing mechanisms. It also allows us to partially de-risk our South African electricity supply and the cost thereof. As part of our strategy, we're looking to maximize the socio-economic development impact of these projects for our infrastructure for impact program. We're also looking to link these projects with our closure projects to ensure that we can supply those communities and those social projects that we are developing with electricity beyond life of mine. Together, these projects will create multifaceted benefits across environmental and social. I'll now hand over to Grant Stewart, who will take us through the balance of the sustainability presentation.
Thanks very much, Jev, and good day to everybody. Global warming is expected to reach 1.5 degrees between 2030 and 2052 at current rates. These rising temperatures and accompanying hydroclimatic phenomena, including changes in precipitation, will lead to disrupted water supplies and amplified flood and drought disasters, impacts that will be felt across communities, ecosystems, and economies. We in our communities are being exposed to these risks, and we therefore recognize the need to invest in good water management and governance, as those that don't will certainly suffer the most. Regional participation in integrated catchment management forums is an area where we, as industry, regulators, civil society, local and national government, must align on a common purpose, much like that of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal, which is the clean water and sanitation for all. We as a vocal participant in these forums are demanding accountability and forcing a move away from just simple talk shops. If we are to make a meaningful difference, we must hold each other accountable, and there must be consequence. It cannot be that we can continue to accept local municipalities' inability to maintain wastewater treatment works, the flow of uncontrolled sewage discharge into our river systems without consequence. Key to building a climate resilient business is an understanding of the complexities of the areas within which we operate. Our US and SA Gold operations are located in water-rich areas, with our US PGM operations operating in water-scarce environments. 65% of the SA PGM operations is supplied from external third parties and therefore align to a water security strategy to secure and sustain safe operations. A key driver of water security is self-sufficiency and to reduce reliance on third-party suppliers. Some of the initiatives that we have in place at the moment include water harvesting, unlocking large volumes of additional storage capacity through the desilting of dams and the utilization of pits. The integration of Americana's water balance into the SA PGM footprint has introduced a great deal of flexibility and the ability to marry east with west, the water-rich areas and the water-poor areas within that footprint. A focus on tailings and density management and control with a target of 1.6 tonnes per cube by 2025 is also a key focus. And then sustainable use of boreholes and grey water from wastewater treatment works. These initiatives will serve to reduce the overall reliance on the integrated Vaal River system, and our target is by 25% in 2025. Water use management at the gold operations in the water-rich areas, as I alluded to earlier, are reliant on external suppliers for some 30% of the water requirements, yet discharge far in excess of those requirements, making independence a realistic achievement. Ezulwini and Cook are already water independent. The Driefontein operations, which currently consume 22 million litres of water a day, with an existing 20 million litre per day treatment capacity or facility, bodes it well to become water independent completely by the back end of this year. The first phase of Kloof to achieve 33% independence is also well advanced, with a plant likely to be commissioned also by the end of this year. Another exciting initiative is a study on our wastewater treatment works across our various footprints. Not only is this a source of grey water supporting our water independence and security drives, but it also is a subject of closure plans supporting the infrastructure for impact philosophy and development of our local communities post-mining. As part of our drive to water security and independence and responsible water management, we have climbed on board and have very clear targets in place and support transparent disclosure. And that's why this year we reported for the first time on our water CDP. Thank you. We recognize the importance of our role in the protection and preservation of all life as part of our broader ESG strategy. This is also highlighted in our ESG policy available on our website. Our aim is to play a positive role in the management of our biodiversity, not only in the areas in which we operate, but also within the regions within which we operate, through catchment management forums, as I alluded to before, and the Good Neighbors Agreement in the US. At our US operations, as part of our Good Neighbors Agreement, we have commitments in place and play an active role in monitoring the trout in the Stillwater River, as well as the conservation efforts to monitor populations of the bighorn sheep. Biodiversity, like water conservation and water demand management, plays a critical role in mitigating the risks of climate change and supports our focus in building a climate resilient business. Our wetlands and ecosystems are the lifeblood of the catchments within which we operate. The fauna and the flora within the wetlands play a critical role in water quality control through the removal of heavy metals, and also play a role in pollutant trapping. They also play an important role in reducing erosion, the impacts of floods and droughts, and the preservation of fertile soils, which are important for our agri-development and support sustainable post-mining socio-economic development. The use of these natural systems and our future cost and focus on expanding the use of artificial wetlands improve our engineering solutions and reduce our operational costs as responsible miners. Whilst biodiversity is a relatively new and emergent theme, we believe we are well positioned to drive ecosystem resilience by targeting a net gain in biodiversity for existing operations and no net loss for new projects. As a member of the ICMM and an active participant of the Biodiversity Working Group, we have set targets to have scientifically based plans that embody the mitigation hierarchy for all catchments supporting a net gain for these existing operations. We have partnered with the Endangered Wildlife Trust as part of the National Business and Biodiversity Network and had a hand in the development of the Biological Diversity Protocol. We will be one of the first companies to report against this protocol internationally. Disclosure, as I've mentioned before, is a principle that underscores and embeds our commitment to ESG. Thanks. We have matured our approach to the way we manage waste on our footprints. Our waste management initiatives are dependent on data integrity and the collection of meaningful data at asset level. We are committed to reducing non-mineral waste to landfill, as well as developing circular economies that benefit local through job creation and sustainable secondary industries. High levels of methane gas and carbon dioxide are generated by waste decomposition. Methane is 84 times more effective at absorbing the sun's heat than carbon dioxide, making it one of the most powerful and potent greenhouse gases and has a huge contributor to climate change. Our management focus to reduce waste to landfill is further outlined in a published waste management position paper that demonstrates how we plan to play a role in fighting climate change, again published on our website. The production of calcium sulfide at both our US and Americana operations is an initiative where we are looking to convert the calcium sulfide into commercial gypsum and thereby avoid 4,000 tons per month of hazardous waste to landfill, which is both a significant cost at both our US and SA PGM operations. Our US metallurgical complex continues research into drying and pelletizing gypsum into cement additives, whilst our SA PGM operations are looking into commercial gypsum into the cement and board industry. Other examples of circular waste economies include the generation of compost from sewage sludge. In 2020, we generated 17.6 tons of compost, and we anticipate an increase of 300 tons once these composters are fully scaled and operational. We also have diverted some 2,200 tons per month of liquid hazardous waste to landfill for recovery of PGMs, and in so doing made our precious metals refinery some 50% independent of potable water supply. We also have a focus on the reduction of mineral waste to tailings, where our acquisition with DRD Gold is anticipated to reclaim and rehabilitate vast tracts of land, and these typically encumbered through the decade-old tailings storage facilities. We've also progressed a number of other opportunities, including the deposition of our tailings into old pits for backfill and reducing closure liabilities. Our US East Boulder mine targets, for example, 55% of tailings to backfill from 48% in 2020. Local job opportunities where local partnerships have been created to utilize the waste rock for pit closure is also an example of how we demonstrate socio-economic closure and development. The Middle Flake pits recently closed was a community-driven and led initiative executed to rid ourselves of the social ills, more specifically in the hot, rainy conditions where young children like to get intrigued and like to play in and around those pits. Thanks. When Jevon spoke earlier, he articulated how we are going to decarbonize as part of our commitment to carbon neutral by 2040. I outlined in the slide before our plans to minimize non-mineral waste to landfill and the impact that the decomposing waste has in respect of its contribution to global warming. Just as important in our fight for climate change is air quality management. Whilst carbon dioxide is recognized as the largest contributor to climate change, a comprehensive approach to tackling climate change can't simply just be on decarbonization. Other gases like sulfur dioxide, as I mentioned in my previous slides, must also be a focus. Whilst we are proud of the levels of the SO2 emissions emanating from our facilities in the US and our SA PGM operations, we are a leading and benchmark leading the benchmark and the peer group when it comes to the US operations. This aligned to the strategic objectives of continuous improvement in technology deployment to reduce emissions further below the regulatory compliance levels is a key objective. As such, we have set clear targets with our overall SO2 capturing and cleaning efficiency to be 90% by 2027 and 99% by 2030 from a base of 80% in 2020 at our SA PGM operations. Another key dimension on air quality management is, of course, the impact of air quality on our local communities. Dust mitigation measures include the implementation of netting, chemical dust suppressions, and planting of tamarisk to ensure that the dust emanating from tailings dams and roads does not impact our local communities who live in and around those footprints of tailings dams and the roads that I've just spoken about. We endeavour to monitor and proactively manage these dust levels through careful dust bucket placements. The group environmental focus is twofold: a crusade against global warming and supporting the development of climate resilient business. Our tailing storage facilities remain vulnerable in the eyes of climate change unless stringent standards and protocols are enforced. Ross Cooper, our Vice President Tailings Engineer, is the custodian of all things tailings. Ross, over to you.
Thank you, Grant, and good afternoon, everybody. Sibanye's acquisitions included the associated active and dormant tailings facilities. Historically, South African facilities were managed in accordance with related legislation, in particular SANS 10286, Code of Practice for Mine Residue Deposits. All South African tailings facilities are constructed in the upstream direction. Facilities in the United States are managed according to the state of Montana regulations. All facilities are constructed as lined impoundments with engineered waste rock embankments. In line with our commitment to zero harm and as a member of the ICMM, we have committed to manage our tailings facilities in accordance with the global industry standard for tailings management. These commitments include providing public disclosures related to the safety of our tailings facilities, which are available on our website and will be developed further as we continue our journey to full compliance. In terms of governance requirements, we've appointed our Chief Technical Officer in the position of Accountable Executive as responsible for the C-suite individual responsible for the safe management of our tailings storage facilities, and appointed myself with 28 years experience in the tailings industry as the group's Vice President for Tailings Engineering, responsible to the Accountable Executive. In terms of independent governance, we have engineers of records appointed for all of our operations and have established an independent tailings review board comprised of 3 internationally renowned tailings specialists for our South African operations. The RTB has reviewed our group tailings management system and are currently busy with the review of selected golden operations, and in October will undertake a review of selected PGM operations. An independent review panel has been in place in the United States for a number of years. To coordinate efforts across the group, we established a tailings working group chaired by myself and comprised of senior managers within the operations. The working group developed the group tailings management system, and we remain responsible for the implementation of the system across the operations. Historic practices in South Africa resulted in a large reliance on technical and operational support from external parties, such as our engineers of record. An internal tailings course has been developed and presented to raise competence within our operations and support divisions as part of our drive to retain ownership of the management of our tailings facilities. To ensure compliance with the global standard within the committed deadlines, formal monthly audits have been initiated at operation level with the identification of actions required to resolve any non-conformances. These audits and actions are consolidated and managed centrally using a digitized platform. Progress against compliance is reported to the Accountable Executive on a monthly basis. Key initiatives we are currently undertaking to elevate tailings management include implementation of the K2Fly tailings management solution. This includes satellite deformation monitoring, and it's placed across the group. The solution serves to consolidate tailings facility performance parameters, as well as environmental and social data to enable proactive risk management. We're currently undertaking detailed stability assessments based on specialized in situ and laboratory testing to evaluate the geotechnical status of our facilities, as well as to update the consequence classifications utilizing the global standard classification matrix. Thank you. I now hand over to Mr. Neil Pretorius, the Chief Executive of DRD Gold.
Thank you, Ross. So we're proud to be included in this presentation, and we're also pleased by the way in which we've been portrayed in the presentation. DRD embraced sustainable development as its primary consideration in the allocation of resources and capital more than a decade ago, and it's become, as a consequence, a technology-based mechanized operator for whom its environmental and social dividends are as important as its financial dividends. Our environmental value add lies in rolling back the environmental legacy of mining by removing and retreating mine waste and restoring land in the process. We've cleaned up in this way just over 900 hectares of land in and around the Johannesburg area, which is an area roughly 16 times the size of the Johannesburg Zoo, or 2.5 times the size of Central Park in New York. Closely related to this, and in fact overlapping in value contribution, is the social value to affected communities of no longer having to live next to a mine dump. Then in instances where a waste facility is permanent, we limit the nuisance of dust to surrounding communities by cladding and vegetating the surface areas of the dump. And you can see in the picture on the slide what that vegetation looks like, and it comes at a price. Last year alone, we spent just over 110 million rand on vegetation and cladding. We also keep all the water in and on these facilities in a closed circuit for reuse. And in fact, most of the water that we use in our process is grey water. Two other important social investments we make are aimed at poverty alleviation and youth education. In terms of the former, more than 4,500 families have taken the first steps out of abject poverty and breaking the cycle of dependency through our broad-based livelihood program. And in terms of the latter, our youth education, teachers and the full-time employee of DRD Gold offer extra classes in maths, science and accountancy at 8 high schools in our area of influence, with remarkable results, I must add. We are primarily a business though, and entrusted with the capital of our shareholders, we expect a return. And in this regard, we continue to offer exposure to the gold price by being unhedged, and we remain very serious about our dividend yield, 14 years in a row of paying dividends. And we're pleased that the total pay to Sibanye-Stillwater to date has been just over half a billion rand. A new theme to our investment proposition is growth. And to the next slide that explains this, we are explicitly aligning ourselves with the broader strategy of Sibanye-Stillwater in building a portfolio of green metals. Wherever Sibanye-Stillwater goes in this regard, there is likely to be mine waste, or stockpile as we prefer to call it. See on this slide how tailings retreatment features side by side with recycling and uranium as part of a broader strategy, and we're very pleased to be taking up this space in the group. We find the prospect of producing the metals used in the generation and storage of green energy by retreating mine waste or through environmental cleanup very appealing, especially if recycled water and PV also come into play. Who would have thought that by rehabilitating mine dumps, one could be delivering into the demands and requirements of the green economy? And we're very keen and also excited to play a role in that regard. And with that, I hand you over to Themba Nkosi to talk about entrenching socioeconomic sustainability. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Neil. A history of extractive industry in most regions has unfortunately brought about high levels of distrust among stakeholders. This is mostly prominent in South Africa with its unique past. This creates context for our operating in South Africa and our socioeconomic environmental impacts. We are therefore inspired by intent to become a trusted economic partner in nation building and to doorstep communities where we operate. This we intend to do playing a three-pronged role, one being a catalyst in the economy, secondly being a participant, and thirdly as a patron. And these are going to happen at various stages of our maturity curve of our operations, and they'll be timed. However, some of the actions are brought forward by the changing environmental context wherein we find ourselves. Our aim is to embed stakeholder relationships that are effective and are trust-based. We will therefore take lessons from the best practice case study of our Good Neighbor Agreement principles from our US operations, whereby we create cooperative models with stakeholders where we operate across regions and across the districts. Secondly, we will therefore strive to create modern mining towns, ensure that we operate within a sustainable environment conscience, work to empower the people that we work with, particularly local government and traditional authorities, and then lastly, ensure that we facilitate and catalyze economic growth where we operate. Now, Grant has spoken about strengthening the flows of value from our activities in the local economy, and this we will do operating and acting with the end in mind. So along our life cycle of our operations, we'll find ourselves intervening firstly via our social and labor plans, ensuring that the social and labor plans deliver improvements and a positive impact in our social asset base. The second one will leverage our land for high impact projects and ensure that where we operate, we do not only leave the previous legacy of the mining industry. However, we leverage our land to integrated spatial development, working with the various stakeholders. We will also strive to build capable institutions such as the traditional authorities and leverage our economic activities to empower local SMEs. We also are cognizant of the housing and living standards of our employees, and we will strive for partnerships, which we are doing in South Africa already with human settlements and the housing development agencies to catalyze integrated spatial developments. For example, the project we are doing in Americana Extension 13 in our SAPGM, as well as the proposed township in West Rand, which is to Comsres Extension 4. We also have got various in agricultural initiatives, which we believe that will leverage and unlock parallel economies, such that when we leave the mining operations, we don't leave ghost towns as has happened and in the past in South Africa. This, we believe, will strengthen our reputation through effective stakeholder engagement, tangible socio-economic development, which impacts sustainable livelihoods beyond the life of mine. Thank you. Moving on, we focusing on entrenching sustainability through economic, environmental, and social transformation. As you know, social transformation is very critical in our industry, as I have just spoken about the legacy of the mining industry, particularly in South Africa, but I think it's prevalent in most regions where extractive industry happens. We'll leverage our assets to ensure that we boost job creation. We also will operate within our social performance model with a social performance toolkit that keeps us honest within our compliance, firstly in the South African context, but also keeping up to standard with the voluntary codes of World Gold Council, ICMM, TFS, as well as the King Code 4 of governance in South Africa within that perspective. Loiso spoke earlier on about embedding human rights inside out. We do believe that the mining industry firstly needs to acknowledge its past, work towards improving lives as it is our imperative and purpose, but also create sustainable livelihoods that are gonna last beyond the life of mine. This we will do by delivering tangible value within our operating context, but also ensuring that we leave 20 cents of every rand spent in the districts where we operate, which will ensure that those districts thrive beyond the life of mine. For example, we will use our infrastructure to create socio-economic development where we operate, and we will talk later on about the Bukamuso Baruna project that we are doing in the West Wits. However, that will create a benchmark for how we live post-mining economies going forward. We will do this in collaboration with our stakeholders and ensuring that Also, our stakeholders are heard and listened to, and we implement grievance and complaints procedures that are aligned to regional and international best practices. Thanks. Our mining has the power to play a critical role in society to close the inequality gaps. This we will do through various flows of value, which we will create for our stakeholders. So we do believe that we have the power to drive socio-economic transformation, and this value will be demonstrated via our shared value ethos, as we know that our shared value is about creating superior value for all our stakeholders, which is a major shift from pure shareholder capitalism to stakeholder capitalism. This slide demonstrates the value that we have created since the founding of Sibanye in 2013 up until 2022. Key numbers as highlights: revenue has grown by almost 560%, salaries and benefits have grown by about 290%, and our socio-economic development impact initiatives have grown by 90%. We do not only stop there, we also believe that our presence in the economy impacts the skills base for, firstly, the mining industry, but secondly, the entire value chain across the mining industry. We also invest in socio-economic development and CSI, again, operating with the end in mind, ensuring that we also build portable skills for communities so that they can have meaningful participation in the economy where we operate. Lastly, we also pay taxes and royalties to the tune of 6.5 billion. As seen in South Africa this year, this has come in handy for Treasury as the mining industry collectively has enabled some social relief fund. As we work with the end in mind, we believe that we can do more as a trusted stakeholder and social and economic partner, and this was demonstrated by interventions of business during the COVID pandemic last year, as well as within the recent unrest events in South Africa. As we rebuild the economy, business is starting to play a prominent role. We believe that this should be the ethos that embraces all the stakeholders in South Africa towards lasting socio-economic impact. Beyond this, we also are mindful of leveraging our supply chain for local economic growth and ensuring that we use our SLP spend to optimize service delivery and leverage value flows through the various community trusts that we hold for meaningful and lasting social impacts. Thanks. As we all know, South Africa has had the unfortunate events of Americana, which led to loss of life. We were not there in 2012 when the Americana tragedy happened, but we believe that it was something that should not be associated with industry. It is wrong. It has to be condemned with all the content it deserves. Going forward, we believe that this creates an opportunity for stakeholders to forge a new path and work together. So we have launched a program that is called the Americana Renewal, supported by the Archbishop Thabo Makgoba of Cape Town as the patron. We believe that this is a structured program that calls for all stakeholders to come together to achieve renewal and restitution. So this basically is based on an African concept of circles of conversation, which we will call the Letsema engagement process, effectively calling for all stakeholders to come together and shape the new legacy of Americana. When we took over in Americana, we made commitment to do 4 things. One was, having spoken to all the widows, we've acknowledged their pain. We have made certain commitments around finding restitution and closure for them. This was about ensuring that they all have got the houses. We also noted that the compensation from government had only gone to the 34 widows whose husbands died at the hands of the state, and some people that got injured and some others that got wrongfully arrested. There are 10 widows that have not found closure and restitution purely because the various cases are at various stages and the wheels of justice are grinding slowly. We have committed to support the pursuit of justice for these 10 widows and their families, and that we will do working together with like-minded institutions, NGOs, and the legal fraternity. We also have set out a 1608 a memorial trust, which we had found in place at the time that we took over at Americana. We've enhanced that. We've ensured that it is fully endowed to see through all 141 beneficiaries until they finish education level as they wish. I think the flagship star of that trust has been Mandla Yawa, who this year will be graduating with his PhD in agriculture. And we also have got 10 other graduates that have come through the system. We also have made a commitment to support the Bapoba Mogale in 3 ways. One is we believe, in line with the Sustainable Development Goals, in creating functional institutions, and we will support capacity building for Bapoba Mogale to ensure that they act and conduct themselves like a professional institution and a traditional authority. As some of you would know, Lonmin had actually gotten into an arrangement where certain business opportunities were given to Bapoba Mogale, and we had found that there was a lot of maladministration in some of those businesses, with the flow of funds that was misused and has disappeared. We also know about the famous D account where 460 odd millions have gone missing. We have committed to hire a forensic company that will do a forensic audit to an extent that some of the monies are recoverable. We will recover those monies, and some of the monies that are not recoverable, we will ensure that the institutions of justice go after those people that maladministered those businesses. We also have a leg of social restoration, which is about creating social programs that bring about change, visible change in that community. I think one of those flagship projects is the Green Project, where we've done subsistence agricultural initiatives that have not only assisted in alleviating poverty and hunger in the area, but has got some income generating capacity. We also have found that there's been lots of gender-based violence, and we've launched a gender equality program, which has got various facets, such as access to institutions for support and psycho-emotional support, as well as ensuring that the victims find the justice and closure that they require. Our SLP project is supposed to be an add-on to functional municipalities with basic services. So we will focus on social infrastructure. We are mindful that if we want to make a lasting legacy, some of the add-on projects would have to be over and above SLP to make sure that basic services and basic amenities are taken care of. And we are committing at least 100 million this year over and above our SLP to deal with some of those social infrastructure and social amenity projects. And lastly, we believe that the recognition of the copy where the Americana tragedy massacre happened needs to bring closure and healing and reconciliation to all participants. So we've called all participants to get into the Letsema process to ensure that we do the 3 steps of honor, engage, and create, where we will create a socio-economic pact to bring about closure around the copy and create a copy memorial, and ensure that as we go forward, we move forward together and ensure that the legacy of Americana never ever repeats ourselves in this industry and under our watch. This leg will also bring about district development model participation, which is a stakeholder collaborative process that will focus on agriculture, industrialization. As we reduce our footprint, we will also leverage our assets to support agricultural initiatives, the value chain, the logistics hub in Americana and surrounding areas. And lastly, we'll develop sustainable enterprise and supplier development initiatives for the local SMMEs. Key to leveraging our assets for social closure is the flagship program, which we call the Bokamoso ba Rona, which is about 3 phases. One is about program mobilization, which is where we are today. There's medium-term impact, and there's long-term value creation. This is a partnership between Sibanye-Stillwater, Far Western Dolomitic Association, with strategic partners being the Gauteng Province, Western Development Agency, and the program managers, which are Talma, CDH, and Zutari. The critical success factors of this program are about us beginning with the end in mind, entrenching long-term economic sustainability, and integrating post-mining economies for sustainability. We believe that in doing this, we will create large-scale catalytic development with the 30,000 hectares of land that both Sibanye and Far Western Dolomitic and Water Associations are contributing. This will facilitate entry for other industries. It will facilitate agro-industrial and commercial value chain, and it will develop an overarching post-mining closure blueprint for mining areas where we operate. The benefits of this project, just talking about key numbers, at medium-term and long-term development will create about 18,000 potential new jobs, which will be will develop into full scale. We believe that it has potential to bring in about 1 billion rand wage bill, 7.6 billion rand potential capex in various activities from bioenergy to animal husbandry and integrated animal farming value chain. We also believe that this project will be a value-adding partner for ultimate success if all partners come together. So effectively call about all like-minded institutions like direct investment from developmental agencies as well as the banking industry. And some conversations are at advanced stages with potential partners for funding. Sibanye-Stillwater has to date put in seed funding of close to about 20 million rand. And also some partners such as the AFDB have gotten on board with potential funding. And this gives us a good usage of our land as we plan for post-mining economy. I thank you, and I'm gonna close here and hand over to Loyiso. Thanks.
Thank you, Themba. We've discussed in detail our commitment to sustainability through our portfolio of programs. It is the consolidation of all of these actions that will provide us with the greatest value and provide benefit directly for all of our stakeholders. The development of the environmental, the social, and the governance outcomes are economically impactful. These design principles have been essential in our drive towards moving towards sustainability rather than the discrete actions of environment only, social only, and governance only. Our commitment in sustainability is, of course, supported by robust protocols and an openness to setting significantly higher standards of rigor and accountability for ourselves. Our membership of ICMM is an example of this. We implement the International Council on Mining and Metals principles as a condition of membership, but also as a mechanism to lift significantly our work. ICMM has a global membership of 28 mining and metals companies and 38 regional commodity organizations, 38, apologies, regional commodity organizations. What it has allowed us to do is to undertake a deep introspection of our work and also to ensure that with the introspection comes an ability to obtain independent external assurance. In line with the Global Reporting Initiative, the GRI, and other principles. This commitment is applied across the group. As a result of our membership of ICMM and our commitment to other standards, thank you, Henrika, we have been awarded a CDP rating of A on our climate change disclosure. In addition to this, we have this year voluntarily submitted ourselves to responding to the water CDP. Those of you that are aware of the CDP project and program know that the level of disclosure that is required by bodies such as the CDP is extensive, and not only is it about reporting, but it is about to what extent has there been intrinsic understanding of the impact of the work we have undertaken. We believe that both on climate change and on water, we have progressed greatly. We align and are a member of the United Nations Global Accelerator Program, and of course, include our commitment to achieving the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. The Global Accelerator Program is aimed at activating the inclusion of SDGs into business priorities, and for us, our commitment has been significant. The presentation given earlier on our support of women in mining and to what extent we've been able to support diversity and inclusion is an example of how we've been able to lift those SDGs. We are a constituent of the FTSE Good Index series. The FTSE, of course, is aligned to the Financial Times Stock Exchange Russell, the FTSE Russell, and we confirm, and it confirms that Sibanye-Stillwater has been independently assessed according to the FTSE Good criteria. And of course, we've satisfied the requirements to become a constituent of the Good Index series. The importance of accolades is really to show and to evidence our commitment towards transparency, towards self-reflection, and towards growth. We understand and we are committed towards a growth mindset, but that growth is underpinned by meaningful impact in respect of our work. The Task Force for Climate and Financial Related Disclosures, for example, has been in discussion since 2018 in the market, with application and confirmed requirements only coming through this year. As of 2018, we had already included the outcomes and the recommendations coming out of TCFD. Those recommendations drove our understanding of our responsibility on the environmental impact and outcomes. So they've already been included within our work. What it remains for us to do is to commit to a timeline within which we will be fully reflective of TCFD commitments. We have now matured that work, and we believe that by H1 2022, we will have been fully committed and aligned. Our sustainability maturity has been about our commitment to a process that improves and to a process that achieves meaningful outcomes for all of our stakeholders. And I'll pass you back to our Chief Executive, Mr. Neil Froneman, to conclude. Thank you.
Thank you, Louisa. And I'm sure you would all agree with me that the people aspects have come through very clearly in today's delivery. As I said, I was excited to see the competence, the professionalism, and the deep depth that we've got in our organisation. So let me try and conclude without summarising everything that was said. So, as I said right at the beginning, ESG is I think pretty well understood today in terms of the components that make up ESG: environmental, social, and governance. We've really moved forward to develop a sustainability strategy, and in fact, the value creation strategy that is derived from that, in terms of the growth in the company, and that is really designing and building a climate change resilient business. So you can see how central sustainability has become to our business. So any suggestion that the mining industry is paying lip service to ESG, I think is completely wrong. I know all our peers are putting in a lot of hard work to doing the right thing in terms of ESG. I would like to think that we have presented a class-leading transition building on ESG to sustainability. So to me, that is one of the key highlights that I hope you all saw from today's presentation. As I said, climate change resilience as an anchor is critical, and no longer is M&A or value creation driven as a separate strategy. It is driven as part of our sustainability strategy. Our operations have clear roads to carbon neutrality. That was well developed and presented in detail by Jevon. And I think you can see our organization is morphing into a resilient business when it comes down to climate change and our green metals strategy. In terms of water and airborne pollutants, we continue to show good progress. Of course, we haven't arrived. I don't think we will ever arrive in the metrics of environmental health and safety. It is a long journey of continuous improvements, but we have clear metrics. Our targets are clear, and we've displayed a track record of delivery, and I believe Grant displayed that extremely well. In terms of social compacting, that remains our aim. Not all our stakeholders are there. We've made significant progress. We've stepped up to the plate at Americana, and I think you saw good examples of that. And it's one of the competencies and qualifications that I think allow us to operate in the environment in South Africa and elsewhere in the world. It's not just South Africa, but South Africa is a pretty tough environment in terms of social compacting. But you can see we've taken that on, and we're right at the front end of that. And stakeholder inclusivity is right at the core, right from our ethos, our tree. We recognize that superior value creation for all stakeholders is an absolute necessity. And of course, we promote stakeholder capitalism, and we are not shy of saying a business needs to be profitable if that is going to be delivered on. Building on that point, the purposeful injection of economic into social and environmental balances the portfolio. I have made it public. We are not social partners. We are economic partners. We have very high social ideals, but we are economic partners that interface with our social partners and provide sustainability because of our economic contribution. And we must not forget that is the primary role of business. We are committed to increasing transparency around ESG issues, and as one of our board members said, it's about radical transparency. It's tough. It is very tough, but we certainly have no hidden agendas. And we will continue to build on providing increasing transparency through our commitments to CDP declarations, our commitment to TCFD, and of course, I did in one of my slides highlight our deeper governance and accountability. Ultimately, the climate change resilient business has resulted in a green energy metal sigmoid curve, which I believe is class leading in terms of the combination of metals, the combination of recycling, the combination of tailings retreatment. And as we build that portfolio, I believe we will be very well positioned as we move into the 2030s with our base of PGMs morphing into the hydrogen economy. So we're well positioned. We're not scratching for ideas in terms of building a climate change resilient business. So with that, thank you very much, and we will now move into Q&A, and of course I want to make sure that you all know there's another set of investor days on the 23rd of September. Thank you very much.